Okay, thank you everyone for joining in today. Thank you, Alan, for agreeing to present to our members this afternoon. I thought before we start, we might do a little bit of a quick welcome and introduction. And I've got a second page on my screen. So we've got about 26 participants at the moment, and a few, as I mentioned, are having some difficulty logging in. Hopefully they'll join us very, very soon. If I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with Zoom and how to get the best view on your screen, but on the top right-hand corner, you'll have a little view option where you can change the format on how you're viewing, whether it be the speaker or other participants. When I hand over to Alan, he'll have a PowerPoint presentation to take us through, which means that you won't actually be able to see as many people on your screen, but you will have the option to increase the PowerPoint presentation to take up your whole screen and then only view the person who's speaking. So that's an option for you as well to get a better view on what's on the screen, depending on what device you're using today. So thank you again, everyone, for participating. It's great to see your faces on the screen. I'm hoping it's not going to be too long before we actually get to meet face to face once again, and we can perhaps travel with a little more confidence and certainty. But in the meantime, these virtual sessions have actually served our association and our members quite well. So before I hand over to Alan, I thought I might just run through some very quick STA updates, just 3 items. Our members who have joined us today will know that we've officially launched our new website. So we're rather excited about that because it is an association-specific website. So it will enable us to include a lot of member-only access onto the website. So whilst we continue to improve on that, we've shared the good news with our members today and encourage everybody who is a member to actually log on and check out the member section, your profile, update your details, and let me know if something's not working so we can actually get it working well for you. The other update has to do with SpecTex and the Awards for Excellence. So SpecTex is taking place in Sydney this year between the 24th and 26th of July in Pyrmont in a venue called Dalton House. Accommodation is open and registrations, whilst they're appearing on our website, I'd like you to hold off registering at the moment until we actually promote the fact that registrations are open. Awards for Excellence are open for entry and they are open only to members of the association. Online entries as per usual. So we have 3 different sections for the awards. The Awards for Excellence, which actually recognise projects. The Apprentice of the Year Award, which recognises apprentices either enrolled in Certificate 3 of Manufactured Textile Products or Certificate 3 in Automotive and Marine Trimming. And we also have the Young Achiever Award, which recognises the young achievers in the membership from the age of 35 and under. So those are open, ready for entry online and close on the 11th of May. That's it from me. I'm going to hand over to Alan, but before I do, I'd actually like to say a few words about Alan and introduce him to you while he's getting ready, and then I'll somehow try to work out how to allow Alan to share his screen. So thank you, Alan. If I could get you, I'm sure most people can actually see you on their screen, but if you could just raise your hand and give us a wave, Alan. There we go. Howdy.
Everyone. Hopefully you've got my voice, so I'm active again.
I do. Hopefully everybody else has. Now, Alan has joined the MPanel Software Solutions team in 2017 after being a user and an agent for the company for more than 12 years. He's now full-time and tasked with developing and supporting global distribution channels while improving software functionality and support. He's been involved in the fabric and tensile structure industry in Australia for over 20 years, involved in both retail and supply, while improving software functionality and support. Alan has been a user of MPanel products for over 15 years and has extensive practical experience of both supply and implementation of fabric structure projects of various sizes around the world. He's been involved in the fabric and tensile structure industry in Australia for over 20 years. I think I read that bit, in both retail and supply with Structure Flex and Shade Living. Thank you, Alan. Before I hand over to you, if I could ask everyone if you've got a question during the presentation so that we're not interrupting Alan all the time, see if you can locate your chat button and send me through your questions, and at the appropriate time I'll forward them onto Alan. I've already got a couple of questions that have come through via email, so I'll put those through to Alan at some stage, and we should be able to get through everybody's questions that way, hopefully. So if I could ask, if you haven't already muted your microphone, please do so. Questions to come through chat. If you find that perhaps that's not working for you, maybe pop up your hand or choose any one of the reaction emojis so that I can notice that you have a comment to make. So Alan, I'll hand over to you, but first of all, I'm going to try and see if we can get you to share your screen. Has that enabled you?
1 second, I've got that same problem we had earlier. Can you see that, Anna?
Yes.
So I've got the same problem we had earlier, where when I maximize the screen, it upsets everything. So I think I'll just operate from this screen.
Yeah, that's fine. Now we can see the slides in order on the left-hand side. Is that okay with you?
Yeah. Nothing to hide.
Okay. So maybe, on my screen, what I'm actually seeing is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 participants with an arrow to allow me to view everybody else. And that's on my right-hand side. So what I can do is actually click on that, move it to the left-hand side where the slide order is, and that way I can view the screen a little bit better. So perhaps if everybody would like to just play around with that, and that will enable you to get the best view.
Unfortunately, with 2 screens, the Microsoft does some weird things working with Zoom, so I apologize for that. So hopefully everybody can see the PowerPoint.
Fine from my end.
Okay.
If you're having any issues,
Wave
please
your
just
hand.
send me something through the chat.
Okay.
Over to you.
Thank you, and thank everybody for taking the time and for the opportunity. So, what we're going to talk about today is design. It is by far, in our opinion, the most important aspect of designing a long-lasting shade cell structure. And we're not talking about, the subjective elements like colors and shapes. It's much more technical. So in a separate session, we'll talk about the hows and whys involved in achieving good design. Today, we're just going to look at the software and how to actually generate designs very, very quickly. So the outcomes will be how to produce multiple designs with visualizations very quickly, how to do it with a client real time, and we'll demonstrate how to produce shadow reports as well. So I'll actually be using the software. Now, this example here, which is actually the splash screen for the program, is a reasonably complicated shade cell design. And I guess the question I'd like everybody to perhaps send in a quick response via the chat is, how long do you think it took to create this design? I know if I was doing this in AutoCAD, I would expect to spend possibly 30 minutes doing it. So I'd be interested to hear what everybody else thinks. Excuse me.
If you don't have the chat option available, perhaps you could unmute yourself and just call out what, how much time you think it would ordinarily take.
Okay, so the program is a non-CAD program. So we're talking about a piece of software that will operate on a basic PC. We're not talking about a sophisticated portable device. It can be a fairly low cost platform. So we're not looking for a huge amount of resource in terms of the computer. The user interface is very, very simple. The workflow is from left to right, just following these tabs at the top of the screen. So we start with the basic details about the client, who entered the project and project revision number. And we're then presented with a working sheet. Now, the working sheet can be a simple grid. So imagine it as a piece of graph paper. We can actually design and draw in this space, and we'll do that in a moment. But the intention is to actually bring in a background so that we're actually doing a design on top of a background. And that background can be an image that you get from, for example, Near Maps or Google Earth or whatever service you've got access to. Some people in the States, in fact, we've got some customers in Australia that have done the same. They go out and buy drones and they flick a drone up in the air, take some photographs of the play equipment at the school, sit down with the principal and do the design real time with the principal at the school. So we can bring in a background from an image, we can bring in a background from a PDF, from a clipboard. So this is the Windows clipboard, so we could copy an image from Google Earth or from a DXF file as a background. So you've got lots of different options for background. I'm going to start by bringing in a simple PDF background. Now, what we're presented with is a tool to actually import the background. And this is actually from one of our customers in Australia. So the first thing we do is rotate this to the correct orientation. Having done that, I'm just going to select this symbol here, which is the direction of north, and drag it to a place in the drawing that I'm going to be working. Now, this could obviously be a scale as well. A lot of PDF drawings come with a scale, and we could drag that scale into the working space. Now I'm going to select the area, do that again, select the area of the drawing that I want to import and select OK. So here is a typical PDF file that we've received. The first thing we have to do is scale the site. Now, I've actually got here in the drawing a dimension to use. I select the 2 points and enter the dimension. Now, this drawing is now scaled correctly in 3D. Everything we do now is correctly scaled. So an important thing that we need to know from any site is we need at least one measurement. And that might be, for example, if we haven't visited the site, we can look at a road or a car park structure and make some, we can scale a drawing by picking up some detail from a photograph. The next thing we have to do is add a north arrow. Now, north here we can see is, we change the angle of north to 25 degrees. And you may not see some of the details here in the properties. You can, at the end of this, I'll give you a link where you can actually download a free copy of the software and use it fully functional for 10 days. So having imported the model, the site, sorry, we're now going to add the shade cells. The first step is to add poles. Now, I'm simply going to follow in clockwise direction. I'm dropping poles on the site. I think I might have snap to grid switched on. I do. So I just hit the undo there to redo the poles. Now what's happened is we've imported, or sorry, added 7 poles that are all the same height. And according to the design here, we need to make some of these poles lower in height. So I'm going to select, hold down the shift key and select the 3 low poles and change the heights, all of those at the same time. The next stage is to add a sail. We start, I use top left, but it just needs to be clockwise. It's not important. There's our first sail. Add another sail. Now, what you may not have noticed when I added that second sail, I'll just go to top view. I'll just undo adding the second sail. Now notice the angle of these 2 poles. As I select the last pole, watch the angle of this pole. So this isn't a drawing program. It's actually a very, very complicated mathematical program that is presented as a very simple user interface to design shade cells. This is a force balance shape. So as we add these sails, these poles are actually changing reaction angle to deal with the new forces of the additional sail. Now we've got several choices. We can, for example, join these 2 sails together. So we simply merge and follow the instructions. We can undo that. We can add a middle connection. And if we go to shadow, look at the shade that we're producing. And if the customer decides that at this particular month, at this particular time that we're not achieving the shadow that we want at this location, we can either add a new shade sail or alternatively go back to the design page, grab a pole and simply move the pole, relocate it. The sail reconnects itself automatically and we can go back to the shadow. So you can imagine sitting down with the principal with your little laptop, having imported an image of a piece of play equipment and making decisions with the principal. Do you want the pole on this side of the footpath or this side of the footpath? And very, very quickly determining that you're going to get the shadow on the play equipment or you're not. If we wanted to add another sail, simply add another pole. Let's add a triangle this time. And we can change the heights of the sail connections. We can change the pole heights. And as we saw before, pardon me, change the location of the poles. So before I move on to other designs, any questions at that stage?
Ellen, I've got a couple of questions that were sent in via email, so you might be able to answer them here now, or alternatively we can hold on. Just let me know and I'll repeat them.
Yep.
First question was how to overlay multiple sails onto one overhead aerial photo. And the other question was, can you design a sail with more than 6 connection points, which we're looking at here, I'm thinking.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So as we saw before, we can join these sails together. So I can merge these sails and then merge these sails. Oops. Pardon me. And I've obviously done something wrong, but we do have the ability. You can see here we've got a 6-sided sail. I know that I can merge a triangle to this. So effectively, within reason, we can produce any number of sail connections. We can also produce fixed edge connections. So we could add a wall, for example, and from that wall, we can add a sail and connect it to. Okay, might have to restart the program. I think I must have done something wrong with it. Apologies, I'm working with a beta version of the software. We're always testing new features, so bear with me a second. I mentioned that was the splash screen for the program.
The question that you asked before, Alan, on how long does it take to create the design, we asked people to send us their suggestions. So I got a 30 to 45 minutes approximately, and someone else said 30 minutes. So how long would it actually take to put that together?
Well, let's actually go to that, that design. Excuse me, I've got a frog in my throat. So to save a bit of time, I created a blank sheet. So we started with a blank sheet, and I've simply, rather than you watching me count the number of squares, which I'm very slow at when it gets more than 10 fingers, I've pre-installed or pre-added the poles. So the other thing that I've done to this design is let's go to the shade sails. I've changed the heights of the poles. Now to show you the procedure, so all of these poles were added at the same time. And I simply, again, hit the shift key, select these 4 outer poles and change the height to 4 meters on those 4 poles, all at one time. The same with these poles, selected all of those at the same time and change the heights. And one pole that's got a different diameter, so I'll change all of the diameters at the same time. And this pole is at 6 meters. The other distinguishing factor, this particular pole has a specified lean angle of 0 degrees. So that took me maybe 2 minutes. So let's now add the sails. And again, watch the angle of the poles as I add the sails.
Sorry, Alan, while you're doing that, can I ask you a question as well?
Sure, yeah.
There's a couple now. I'm just trying to go back up and find them.
Somebody's testing if he can walk and chew gum at the same time, right? So watch the angle of this pole. It straightens up. So there's our basic design. And then we're simply adding mid connections to each of the sails and working our way around. So literally you could do a design like this in under 5 minutes. I think I've done it in under 4 minutes at a trade show. So, and if we want to now make changes to the fabric, so you can see I've got, this is currently Gale Commercial 95. You may not be able to see this detail. Most of the fabric databases are included with the software. And as we get new fabrics, we add them. So if we wanted to make these two of the sails a different color, for example, oops, I forgot to actually make that change. So I'll make this yellow. I'll make both of them yellow at the same time. Again, I hit the Shift key, commit changes, and now we've got different colored sails. And as we did before, this program mathematically is capable of dealing with a fairly complicated model. Grab a pole and move it, and the sail moves with it. So it does give you the opportunity, if you had a background image here with play equipment, you can very, very quickly show the principle. Here's the shadows in November, December, and are we getting the right coverage? Move the poles around, change the heights of the poles to achieve the desired results. Any other questions on that?
I've got a few questions that have come through, Alan.
Yep.
What if we want multiple connections at different heights on the same post?
Okay. I'm going to take this pole here as an example. So you need to go back to the design page. I'm going to change this from a 2.5 meter to a 5 meter pole. And then selecting this sail, which I entered A, B, C, D, following the same work with each sail. I now select the pole top offset for corner C and change it to 2050. And we can see that pole. We've now got 2 connections on that one pole at different heights. Any others?
Yes. Are the yellow markings underneath the post center measurements?
Yes. Yeah, and that's something that's set up by default in the program. So at the very beginning of the program here under settings, we have defaults established for the program. So the basic grid, for example, in my case, I use a 24 by 14 meter grid. The dimensions are yellow. Now, if I don't want a yellow, if I was using, it's good with a color like a photograph background to have something that's contrasty. Obviously, when we're dealing with a clean sheet of paper, the yellow is not very easy to see, but you can zoom in and you can see here, these are 6 meter by 6 meter, actually 7 meter, so, and the diagonal. So I can change those individually, or obviously change them as a default, and then every time I add dimensions, or sorry, add a sale, it automatically adds dimensions. Now, for the purposes of presentation to the customer, you might choose to leave those dimensions on. We can turn the grid off. We can turn the dimensions off. We've got filters to turn anything on or off in the program.
Okay. Can I run one more question past you?
Sure, Anna, yeah, keep going.
How do you populate the fabric specifications into the software for calculations of elongation?
Is that Andrew that asked that question?
Do I have to say?
I saw Andrew was there. You'd have to have an engineering question. This program is not dealing with the actual fabrics. So it's assuming, in other words, it's unitless. So all of the fabric is being dealt with as a grid, and the force balances are being calculated on a unitless basis. So it's effectively the soap film analysis that's being used.
Okay. And one more question. Is there any way to see if the water pounding can happen in this design, especially for PVC membrane?
Unfortunately not. This is a design program only, so it's for visualization purposes. It does not deal with ponding. So we have other programs that are more technical that will deal with that. But yeah, this tool is primarily designed for the front of office. The purpose is to help actually get orders, to get designs. So it is for producing designs for your quotations, working with the principal so that you're actually designing a solution that is the principal's solution. He's not going to be buying from anybody else. He's going to be buying his own design from you. It's the software that you use to actually get the purchase order in the first place. Let me just quickly walk through the other things that the program will do, and then we can come back to questions. So we looked at the ground image as being a PDF. We can also bring in an image or a DXF, and I'll show you, rather than actually go through those, I'll simply show you a couple of examples of those once we've finished. We can also add frame shade structures. So we now have the ability to add umbrellas, either square or hexagonal, or sorry, radial or polygon based. The same with a standard frame shade structure. So a simple rectangular frame shade structure or a polygonal frame shade structure. Now you can see here, this is all completely parametric. So if I want to make this 6-sided hexagonal instead and change the device from a 3-meter diameter to 6-meter diameter, and move it into a location, I can rotate the thing around, change the color of the fabric, change the poles, change the pole heights, change the basic shape of the frame shade structure. And the same applies to a conic. So the umbrella is exactly the same. Obviously, with an umbrella, the poles are, instead of being in the corners, will be in the center. Let me just open up a design that So here we've got a design that is on an image background. So typically we would turn off the grid, and we've got mixed height holes, sales with mixed connections. We can turn off the dimension information, and obviously you would be able to add a mid connection, change the colors of the sails. The other important results from the program are the ability to produce reports. I'm going to produce an installation report. Just zoom out so you can see it. So here is the pole set out information. Typically, you would also add, back in the design stage, we would add a couple of additional points, and from those points, we'd add a couple more dimensions. So from reference points, for example, from here to the poles, you'd have reference information for the installers. And the other thing that's important is we're actually providing the correct pole lean angle. So you can see here, pole 5 is actually leaning at 2 meters away from pole 2. So from a line between pole 2 and 3, you can see we would actually lean pole 5 backwards, pointing at that location. We also had visualization reports, which would go to the customer, which include the display of the design itself and a shadow analysis. And we can produce multiple shadow analysis for different months or times of the year. And a simple layout, isometric top, right, and front view. I've just realized I'm taking a lot more time than I should have, Anna. So let's.
That's quite all right, Alan. Not
Okay.
a problem. I think it would be very hard to explain this in a few short minutes. So, and I'm sure that everyone's okay to hang around for another 5 or 10 if needed.
Well, I was going to just on the presentation here, you can see that same design we looked at before. And the idea of presenting to a customer multiple design options, even drawing these sorts of designs by hand in a simple plan view, which I know a lot of people in the industry still do for the purposes of quotations, it's still a time-consuming task. So if you're generating lots and lots of quotations and providing drawings for the client, providing 3 different design options, which in Insight took me 5 minutes, would take a considerable investment of time to generate these alternatives. So this is with an image background, and you can see different colored sails with the center connection, or let's put a frame shade structure in there instead. The last example here, this is a design which was drawn where we imported a DXF file into the background. The sails were designed, you can show the customer a plan view, front view, and here's the actual finished job. So you can actually show the customer what it's going to look like, and afterwards actually see the finished design, the finished sail, sorry, in a photograph, how well it stacks up. So I'll wrap up by inviting any other questions, but also once again, thank you. And I'm just putting a web link here, mpanel.com/register, or there is actually a button on the home page. Now, if you go to this point, you can actually, once you've registered, you can get a fully functioning demo of the program. There's no cost involved, no obligation. It will work for 10 days, fully functioning. It will do everything. And during that time, if you've got any questions, you're welcome to email the questions to support@mpanel.com or to me, alan.stewart@mpanel.com. And I'm happy to do a screen share with people. We can work on a particular project or answer any questions.
Thanks, Alan. I might circulate that information to everyone who's attended a little bit later on, if that's okay.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. I'll save this and send it to you so you can distribute it.
Thank you. And if I could just run a few more questions by you, I think you may have covered a few of these, but just to be on the safe side. The first one is, can you work with a minimum degree of fall, i.e. for PVC?
No, other than visual, and there's basic mathematics involved in working out the slope angle of a sail. So that could be applied in the design stage. If you know that the minimum requirement for fall is X number of millimeters per meter, it's quite easy for you to design the post heights accordingly.
Thank you. The next question is, what is the option reports for?
Okay. Option reports. Okay, I'm not seeing an option report. There is an edit reports. Perhaps that might be what they're saying. This program allows us to not only, we send it out in standard with a whole heap of template pages. So we can actually generate our own reports. So here's all of the available PDF templates. We've got a layout in landscape view, standard layout, pole footings, pole lean, pole top details. So there's actually a fabrication detail for the poles as well. If we go back to the sail pole report, here we can see pole number 3 has 2 lugs attached to it. One is 50 millimeters from the top, the other one is 2050 from the top, and 39 degrees or 40 degrees rotation. So this could be sent to the fabrication department for them to make the poles. Hopefully that answers that question, Anna. I'm not quite sure what the option report was.
That's okay. If there's more to that question, then perhaps the person who asked it
can email me
in a few moments. The
Absolutely.
next question was, can we please have a demonstration of more than one connection along the span of 2 sails?
Along the span of 2 sails. We can't do that. Sorry, it's only one connection between two sails.
Okay. Thank you. And looks like the last question. Can you introduce overhead steel to prop up sails?
I got that email recently from somebody, so I suspect that's the same person. We are working on new designs constantly. So every year we make changes to the software and release improvements as well as updates. We have to keep the software maintained to deal with Microsoft making changes and other DLL changes that happen to make sure that we're compatible with those. At the moment, we have the ability to make shade sails and frame shade structures and umbrellas. We intend in the future to add other frame structures. We're also exploring in the next development cycle to actually be able to import a DXF model that the user can then parametrically make changes to. So each year we'll add more and more features and we'll add more and more structures. So we have plans already for things like barrel arch structures and car park structures. So I'm sure we'll get to that person's design eventually.
That person says fabulous.
I'm pleased to hear it.
Okay, so we'll take 1 or 2 more questions. If anyone else has any, please just shoot them through the chat option. In the meantime, I'd like to say thank you very much Alan. Yeah, I'm not even in the shade cell business, and I found that rather interesting and fairly easy to follow. It just goes to show how much our industry has changed from a technology point of view over the last decade or so. Hoping that everyone in this session has found the information helpful. I'll pass on Alan's contact details and that link for the demo for 10 days, the demo registration to everyone. And if you have any questions at all, even after the session, I'm sure that Alan would be happy to take them.
More than happy.
I do have one last question. Can the software calculate the use of fabric?
Not in terms of meters, but it does as part of the standard reports. So if we generate the standard visualization report, we do provide you with some information to tell the customer. So the actual surface area of the shade sails is 71.5 square meters for the 2 sails. And the site area, which is often misquoted, people will often quote their design as a distance between the poles at 10 by 10, and therefore it's 100 square meter shade sail, where in fact the actual shaded area is substantially less. So we give you both. That's the distance between the poles, and that's the actual shaded area. And you do have control over the catenary dip span curve depth. So you do get some control over what that ratio is.
Terrific. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Okay, so we'll make that the very last question. As I mentioned, if you've got any questions, send them through to me, or feel free to ask Alan directly once I share his contact details. Nick, you've got a waving hand. Was that because you're saying goodbye, or you wanted to say something? Okay, all good, he says. Terrific. Thank you again, everyone, for your time today, and a huge thank you to Alan once again for his time and for sharing that information with regards to MPanel for us. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'll have a video ready and uploaded, and I'll let everyone know once that's happened. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Anna.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alan.
Thanks, everybody.